need for a way more nuanced approach. And there is a big issue here with, I say this as a researcher, with data collection, because mostly the sample sizes are too small to actually go into kind of the individual kind of little sub-ethnic groups. So everything just gets lumped together. But actually, you know, the differences within groups is really important to take note of. And also how different factors interact, which Michaela's already talked about. So, you know, race is just one factor. There are many others that interact with that. And also this kind of avoiding a kind of us-them approach, which I think is a really dangerous route to go down. But also recognizing that there will be resistance to climate justice, right? Because it requires some people to relinquish power. So of course there's going to be resistance. And it can be tempting to then go into an us-them, you know, mentality around that. But I think that is to be resisted. And then also to step back every now and then from the kind of, you know, the climate action and really remember the underlying ideology behind it all. This conquest mentality, you know, stuff around colonization and oppression, and that can sometimes get lost. So it can be useful just to take that step back and just remember that there's a much bigger narrative going on here, and the shift that needs to happen isn't just about swapping, you know, to renewable technology. Is much bigger than that, as Michaela's been talking about as well. I mean, you know, what we're talking about is a global shift in consciousness, basically.
No, thanks. And I totally agree with you when you think about, like, it's like creating this vision of a different way of living is so important, because a lot of the work that's done around like climate action or the climate movement is actually still within the paradigm of the existing political economic structures that are based around capitalism, colonialism, and that have led to extraction, exploitation, which is what causes racism. It causes the othering. And if we're not addressing that core issue beyond fossil fuel extraction, but looking at mirror extraction, looking at land grab, looking at all of these global issues that are happening to people of color right the way around the globe, that how do we create this climate movement without actually looking at our political economic systems? So for me, that also has to be brought into a climate movement. Yes, and it's so important to look at intersectionality, like Michaela says, is join all the dots, and rather than looking at things in silos. So we have to connect everybody and everyone's movements together to build a stronger movement for the climate movement. And in doing that, I think that's quite important, because then we're reclaiming culture, language, and all of these issues, you know, all of these things that are taken away from us. And I think that's what we're trying to create in the migrant justice block of the march. So we're trying to encourage people to join that. But again, wear your traditional costumes, use your language, you know, be yourselves, make it like a festival. You know, it doesn't have to be this place where we're the vulnerable, the marginalized, but actually, how do we contribute? We can contribute to the movement. We can contribute to the solutions. We are resilient. So it's actually acknowledging our place in that movement.
Also, one thing that my friend, whose name has evaded me, Samir, I don't know why that happened, apologies, said recently not recently, actually probably about a year ago on a talk that we did together, was that like we need to realize that like all racism is environmental, because like all of it happens within our environment, and therefore all anti-racist action is like also for the benefit of our environment as well, because it's not just about like the planet's health, but our societal health, and making us all healthy and the environment healthy. And so I think that we also need to kind of go beyond this like categorization of actions into this is an anti-racist action, and this is a climate action, and this is an action for, because all these things are connected and are connected in so many different ways. And I think it's about expanding our understanding of what anti-racist work looks like, also what climate work looks like, and finding the spaces where all of those overlap and leaning into those spaces where they overlap and encouraging that as well. Especially with COP coming up on the 6th of November, there's going to be a big day for climate justice, a massive march happening in Glasgow. I know that Serena's been involved with a lot of the migrant justice stuff around that, so she probably will have more to say around that. But there'll be a migrant justice block. There's going to be like a global justice block. There's going to be loads of different people. It'd be amazing to see as many communities of colour coming to that space, but also everyone coming along to support this vision for climate justice that we have. But there's also going to be in like the best world you could possibly imagine, that's like free of all oppression, all the harm and the violence that's currently existing. And that's what I see like a climate just, there's a multiplicity of futures, but that's what a climate just future could look like. And I think that when we're talking about land, especially, like that's a really key demand that we can have in the climate justice movement, is like, that's reparations. I think sometimes gets talked about as if it is this like figurative thing, but it's a very real demand. Like, give us back land and let's have ownership of it, but also let us grow food from it. Imagine how much healthier communities would be if everyone had access to like land they could go to and grow things from and really experience, and how much more connected we'd be to nature if we had that as well. And climate justice is not just about emissions, it's not just about like stopping the bad stuff, it's also about building new stuff as well, and building new futures, and about tackling real systems of oppression. It's about like solidarity with all different oppressed groups. It's about liberation for all of us, more than just equality. And it's not about equality and inclusion, it's about liberation. It's about this like radical transformative vision that we can have for a whole world.
Then you've also got these ideas of progress, which come, you know, right back from the Industrial Revolution, around this idea of the move from the countryside to the city is a symbol of progress. And then, you know, and this is in the context of a worldview which is associating kind of primitivism with nature, right? And nature is in this dualism with humans. So then, you know.
So what Michaela was saying is that, and if we look at like poverty and we break it down to like things like food poverty or fuel poverty, again, if we're tackling those and we're tackling it in a way which is pro-environmental, we're doing both. So it's saying that it's not about doing one or the other. It's just saying that if we're more pro-environmental, we are actually creating better systems and better access for everybody in society, and we're not leaving anyone behind.
So yeah,
actually, one quickly thing is I was going to say,
it was directed at Nadine, but I would like to pose it to Zarina and Michaela as well. But do you see your work as a form of resistance and reparation as well? And they've put, i.e. reclaiming that connection with nature, where we're told that we don't exist, we don't belong as people of color, as a form of resistance and reparation. So maybe just very quickly, what are your thoughts on that? And anyone can answer first.
Well, my answer was yes. I typed in, and I love this question. But for sure, it's subversive as well. You know, it's a form of disruptive technology, really, doing that nature connection stuff. And